Okay, let's talk about slavery in the Old Testament, specifically Leviticus 25. Now, this is not about slavery at all. We need to get used to the fact that the Bible has stories that mean something completely different. They're just using the language of the day, the words of the day, the activities of the culture of the day to explain something that is completely different. Leviticus 25 is about redemption. The property and the land is about our sphere of influence when we attain to the level of what Jesus did. So the Christ. So Jesus faced his crucifixion. This is a metaphor for facing the darkness that rises against the light that is rising in the person. So the light was rising in Jesus, and he was facing the rising darkness. Now this is going to happen to each one of us who receives God consciousness through being born again or awakened. It's our first resurrection. It is nirvana with remainders in Buddhism. It is when our name is written in the book of life. We're also the beheaded ones. Why are we called the beheaded ones? Because we change our mind and we see it as complete joy. And so that is the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is joy. Then we will go on to face our metaphorical crucifixion, just like Jesus did. And even though there's controversy about whether Jesus really was crucified, that doesn't matter. The thing is that the story we're told is actually truth, is the mythos of truth, is spiritual truth. And it tells us that we will face a tribulation, we will face a metaphorical crucifixion. So the reason I'm saying this is because this has something to do with Leviticus 25. It is when we are facing tribulation, and then there is the resurrection, which is Jubilee. So it's the Sabbath. It's the resurrection is the Sabbath. It's resting in God after we've done the work of the 6 days, the sixth. The seventh is resting in God, in the joy of God, the resurrection of God. Okay. Leviticus 25 talks about land. This has to do with the people who we are connected to spiritually. I call it the sphere of influence. And so for Jesus, the sphere of influence would have been his apostles, would have been Judas, and they would return to heaven in different ways, because Jesus would have helped them by bringing in the light of the resurrection. He would have helped them get to heaven one way or another. Now, there are two ways to get to heaven. One is to have a God identity and become the Christ. That's what Jesus did. That's probably what the Apostle John did, and Peter, and the good apostles. And then there's just getting back to heaven by being absorbed into the consciousness of the person that you are spiritually affiliated with. So let's take Judas. Judas didn't choose God. He separated himself from God by choosing the world. And by doing that, he did not become Christ. And so what happens to somebody like that is we cannot leave them behind. They are part of the work that we come to do. And so Jesus came to do his work. He came to redeem time and space, his sphere of influence, his portion of time and space. And Judas is a part of that, but he can't go back as a Christed one because he did not choose God. He probably was not born again. He did not choose God. He chose the world. So what happens to somebody like that? Well, this is what is referred to as the heathen in Leviticus 25. The heathen are those who just did not choose God or God consciousness, and they cannot be brought back to heaven as Christ, because we need to choose God, and we have to walk this journey of the path of the Christ. We have to be born again, and then we have to face tribulation. We have to overcome as the Christ, as the Lamb. Judas didn't do that. So what happens to him? He goes back to heaven, but he's absorbed into the lake of fire that is in Jesus. The lake of fire is redemption and resurrection. Now, the lake of fire, when it touches Jesus, it does not obliterate Jesus, his soul, because his soul has chosen God, he is the Christ. But it does obliterate or consume somebody like Judas, because Judas didn't choose God. But we need to bring back the Judases of the world too into heaven, but not as a conscious self. They lose everything. It's just brought, that stream of consciousness is just brought back, transmuted back into God consciousness, but without an identity, without a conscious self. So that's what Leviticus 25 is trying to tell us. It's saying, look, this is all about redemption. What happens during tribulation and the resurrection, Jubilee, is that there will be those who are affected by your rising light, the light of the resurrection in you. The lake of fire is in you, is in us, as the Christed ones. We are bringing the judgment. We have dominion over the earth because God gave it to us. But now we have the light of the Father in us who's doing the work in us. So he said, look, you're going to take dominion over the earth. What are you going to do about it? And we're going to say, well, we're going to choose you, God. And he says, good, because I can bring time and space back up to heaven. Okay, let's do it. That's our job. That's Jesus' job. That's the job of each one of us who attains Christ consciousness, who attains Holy Spirit consciousness during the rebirth. And so the bondservant we get are from the heathen. So that would be like a Judas. Judas did not choose God. He is heathen, and he needs to be the bondservant of Jesus, because Jesus can bring all of that back, his consciousness back. So it's not sitting here in time and space to reincarnate or to suffer more or to make others suffer, because when people are in darkness like that and haven't chosen God, it's all about suffering. It's karma, it's suffering, it's pain, it's sin, right? So we need to bring it back. So we get the bondservants from the heathen. That's what that means. It doesn't mean we're going to go to some person who, is not a spiritual person and make them our slave. It means we're going to bring them back home, but not as a conscious self. Okay. So then there are those who God says, don't make them your bondservants because they're my servants. Who are they? They're the ones who are born again or will be born again. And possibly the light that is in you will touch them and awaken them and help them with that. It will give them the opportunity to be born again. So our light affects people. We're all connected, remember. So our light affects people, our sphere of influence, our world. And we cannot make them our bondservants. We're not going to absorb them into us, into the lake of fire of resurrection that we are, because they are now a self, a Christ self, a God self. And so God says they will have their own land, their own sovereignty. Then there are those who are getting close to being born again. And God says if they're not redeemed during that time, let them go, and they will go back to their families, and maybe they will be redeemed by their kin, or maybe they will redeem themselves. So these are people who are like on their way to being with God. They're choosing God, but they're not quite there yet. Don't try to convert them, because they might turn away. And so there's a time when you're like, okay, I can help them, I can convert them, I can, help them get to God. And then there's a time where you just let it go and go, okay, let these people go, let them go back to their families, and they will be redeemed at another time. Then there is the house that is surrounded by a wall. Now, remember, Jericho was surrounded by a wall. This is a metaphor for walls around our own inner place that has not surrendered to God. So we need to get those walls down, and then we will be born again, because once that light gets in there, it makes it the promised land. And so that's why he says that if they have a house that is surrounded by walls, and the walls, and at the end of all of this, the walls are still up, there is no redemption. Okay, so this is a metaphor. But he says, but if there are no more walls around this house, then they can be redeemed, which means that those walls have come down like Jericho, and now the light can get into the city or into the wickedness and can transmute it, transform it back into God consciousness. So then those people can have their land back. They will be God's servants They will be part of the spiritual family of God. That's what this chapter is about. It has nothing to do with slavery. Our God redeems and resurrects. And is there pain? Yes, there's pain. But it's not him saying, go and kill these people. It's him saying, bring everything back up. I've given you dominion over the earth. What are you going to do with it? And some people are going to bring it down. They're going to bring more darkness to the world. But those of us who choose God will become the Christed ones, and we will face the darkness and bring it back home. We will redeem time and space and keep redeeming it until we bring it home. And that's what Jubilee and Leviticus 25 is all about.